fundraising, the goal of giving philanthropy, it connects you with your power and your purpose. Your power is like what the assets that you have, and the purpose is your life's meaning. I feel like what makes fundraising and what makes people really powerful fundraisers is when they're calling people into their next level of leadership.
Not to assume that you know
Yes.
what someone can or can't spend or will not spend, and like instead really make the case for the value of what you're offering and let that person make that decision. Hey there, superstar. I am so excited because I have something very new and very special for you today. I have invited here my friend, my colleague, my client, Maryanne Dersch, who is someone who has so much knowledge, so much wisdom that I invited her here so that she could share it with you today. So we're going to have a conversation. I don't actually know exactly how this conversation is going to go. It's going to be kind of open-ended. I have a whole list of things I want to ask her and talk to her about that I thought you'd be interested in. We're going to talk about influence, about sales, about marketing, about branding, about personal development, personal growth, all the things. And so before I dive into it, I just want to tell you a little bit about Maryanne. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Maryanne Dersch trains nonprofit leaders to master the art of influence so that they can raise more money without being rejected or feel like they're being pushy. Her love this. Her effervescent badassery.
That's from a quote. That's from a quote from a feedback form. I'm like, I'm putting that in the bio. No, that's why there's quotes. Somebody said that by
her effervescent badassery calls you to be more influential in your work and in your life. Maryanne spent 30 years working in the sector, helping organizations communicate more effectively. And from those experiences, she authored the book, Courageous Communication, Why Codependence is Making Your Nonprofit Brand Boring and What to Do About It. She's no stranger to being courageous. She hosts the influential nonprofit podcast and the annual Donor Attraction Forum virtual event. And I'll say that I will remember forever the day that I first saw Maryanne walk into a room where she came to attend my Superstar Speaker Academy, Superstar Business Breakthrough.
Business Breakthrough,
And she was her brand. She head to toe purple, her hair was purple, and I just remember saying to her, I've never seen somebody embody their brand more. And now that I've known her for 5 years, I can tell you from the inside out, she embodies her brand. So welcome, Maryanne.
Thank you. Yay. This is so fun.
Right? So Maryanne, let's start with something that I think a lot of people will be able to relate with. You work with nonprofits. Mm-hmm. You help them raise more money, become more influential. What is one of the biggest challenges that you find people face when it comes to raising money, making sales, and having influence?
Really, the biggest challenge is like asking for money. I call it like the trifecta, because it's the vulnerability of asking for help, money, which is a trigger, and the possibility of being rejected, right? Like putting yourself out there. And that can create a really potent combination that keeps people from standing in their power and really asking for what they want. And a lot of times what I saw was people using like strategy, scripts and templates and things to help people feel more comfortable. But I really come at it from more of an inside out approach, helping people understand, how feelings work, how to manage rejection, all of that so that they can ask for what they want. And they understand like how to process all of the inside stuff so that those scripts and templates actually work.
Got it. Well, okay, so you said a word that I want to define because I have a feeling it's going to come up a few times in this conversation and future conversations because we're going to do a few videos together. When you say money is a trigger for people, what do you mean by that?
So, our relationship to money and our money mindset and how we think and feel about money. And we have a lot of value. We place a lot of value on our relationship to money and how we relate to it. And everybody has a different relationship, mostly born out of childhood, right? And so sometimes, I'll just give you an example, all right? So I was working with this client. She was an executive director of an organization. She was having fights with the board president over the money. she was a saver. She grew up in poverty. She had a mom who saved, and that's how they got out of poverty, through savings. And she's an investor. This person was more of like hey, everything's going to work out. Let's break even.
Okay, so we have one person
right.
who's your client,
right.
who's the saver.
And the other one who is like, we'll figure this out. We got this. And I don't know what his money story is, but probably something around that, And it always works out. And so they were having these conversations and they were having a hard time. But really what was going on was like, it was conversations like they were both 7, because it was those feelings that come up from childhood. And then once she realized, oh, wow, that's how I feel about money. Okay, I get it. Then she was more open to.
In other words, I have a trigger around money when someone else is not saving it or treating it the way I do. That's a trigger for her.
Right. And or asking somebody for money. So in fundraising, it's a different relationship because you're asking somebody for money. And if you feel like they're not getting anything in return, that it's not a fair, even exchange, that can be really hard for you to ask people will you give us $25,000? What do you get? What do they get? A thank you? Well, yes. And, so if you see it as a burden, a lot of fundraising is a burden. Oh, I don't want to ask them for money. What if they said no? And then they would feel bad. And then we'd have this weird relationship, There'd be a break in the rapport of the relationship. When that happens, or they're afraid that will happen, and so they just don't ask because they don't want to burden people. Right. And especially when COVID hit and everything, we can't ask people for money now. Right. But actually, fundraising, the goal of giving philanthropy, it connects you with your power and your purpose. Your power is what the assets that you have. And the purpose is your life's meaning. There's always a good time to connect people with their power and purpose.
Right, especially during
those times.
Challenge.
Yeah, I had somebody say oh, but who cares about tulips in the park when we have all this going on? I'm like, I care. Of course I would. I'd care 100% more because I want all these things to flourish. I want organizations to grow. I want people to get help and support it. And so that's the biggest thing, is really shifting your mindset from fundraising as a burden, or putting upon people, and rather as a gift, asking people to step into their leadership and live a more aligned life where they're actually putting their assets and their money towards the future that they want to see.
Right. In other words, you could look at it as taking away from someone.
Right.
Oh, you're taking money from somebody that they could spend on something else. And what you're saying is, well, a lot of people would rather invest their money in something meaningful than in another dinner out. Right. Or in whatever. Maybe there is a sacrifice or maybe there's not. One of the things I've heard you say, I think, is not to get into people's wallets, not to assume that what someone can or can't spend or will not spend, and instead really make the case for the value of what you're offering and let that person make that decision.
Yes. And also, I feel like there's a shift right now in the industry, and the old way of asking for money was here's all of these things that you could, your $100 does this, and that's important. I feel like what makes fundraising and what makes people really powerful fundraisers is when they're calling people into their next level of leadership, their next level of who they are as a person and their gift to the world. I mean, and I'm going to tell the story of our friend, Corey Kupfer. He was on my podcast because when we were in a retreat together, he talked about how somebody asked him for an enormous amount of money.
That's right.
And he was terrified, but totally changed his life. But they said, you are a leader. You are a global investor. You can change the world. And he was like, I'm a lower class kid from, Queens or something. I can't change the world. And they asked him for a $25,000 gift. He started to panic. He said yes. And he's like, oh my God, I got to redo my budget, blah, blah, blah. But when he gave that money, 2 things happened. One is he redefined his view of himself as not just this working class kid,
right,
but as a global investor, as somebody who can really change the world. And once he started giving that money, his business, which was very new, he's a lawyer, started to boom because he flowed the money out and then the money started to flow in, and he felt that abundance and that gift. And then this organization, which is called the Hunger Relief Project, wound up taking him all over the world, and he visited all of these countries and met people, and so his life was forever changed. And when he talks about it, he cries. And he was interviewed on my podcast, and I would encourage anybody to go to Influential Nonprofit, listen to this episode, because if you hear how powerful it is to really give of yourself and how good that feels, you would never hesitate to ask people for, you know what I mean, any amount of money, because it makes you feel so amazing, and it steps you into the next level of a more aligned life. Yes, it's important to meet the needs of people, and also, it just calls people into greater alignment with who they truly are and the change that they want to see.
Beautiful. Thank you, Maryanne. That was juicy information, very powerful. If you're curious about learning more, I highly recommend checking out Maryanne's book, Courageous Communication. It's a great book about taking a stand for what you believe in.
So what Mastering the Art of Influence does is open you up to the support, the community of support that's around you, and allowing them to sort of like walk with you, so you don't feel like you're carrying it alone. And that just means, enrolling people in your vision, and what that means first is standing in your own value, right? And raising your own standards. So that's what we work on.